Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another fabulous night of Passport to the Paranormal. Hey, Joe, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, good. How you doing? Long day out
Good.
here, huh? Long
Yeah,
day?
oh, crap. A
Yeah, I'm
very long
I'm
day.
all psyched. I'm all hopped up on Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, what I'm loving about tonight's show is we're doing something different than we normally do. We do
Okay.
have a special guest. However, our special guest is actually a guest co host. She is going to put Joe and I in the hot seat and ask us questions. And also, if any of you guys have any questions out there, feel free to ask because this is our Ask Us Anything show. So, before Joe and I, because if I get Joe talking, he's going to babble and we'll never bring Temperance in. Um, so, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are
Hi,
you?
Temperance.
Hi. Nice to meet you, Joe.
Good. And
Yeah.
before you take over as co-host of the show and ask us questions, can you just let everybody know a little bit more about who you are?
Sure. Well, first, I'm an author. I write paranormal romance, and I actually have a co-host, but her baby is sick tonight, so she's not going to be able to join us. But we kind of bonded over our love of the paranormal. She writes a little bit similar to what I write, and so we kind of just started chatting about a little over a year ago, actually probably more than that, and we're like, let's start a podcast. But we didn't want to just like get on and talk about, hauntings. We wanted to really dive deep and talk about, how to really differentiate between what a haunting actually is. Could it be something that can actually be explained and stuff like that? So it's kind of become our passion for me, especially because during that process, I actually joined a paranormal investigations team. So I'm now a paranormal investigator. And so it's really helped me just understand everything that goes into the process, what's involved in the paranormal field. And I like bringing that to the podcast. So when we come across these stories or when people write into us, because we've gotten some of those as well, and they ask, hey, what's your opinion on this? Now I can look at it with a really, with a good eye and say, okay, well, I wonder if, they tried this or if they looked into this. And I'm able to, through the podcast kind of, I look at myself as being, as an educator. You are an educator when you're in this field because it's kind of your responsibility to put the truth out there and explain to people what is actually involved in it and what is not involved in it. So me and Piper get together and we talk anything paranormal, not necessarily just ghosts. We've had a UFO story recently. Somebody wrote into us and shared that, and it was really, really interesting. And so we just get together, and it's kind of just a fun time, but also a learning time as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And we do actually need to, when you both have a chance, we'll get you both back on the show and we'll put you in the hot seat and interview you guys as well.
Absolutely. We'd be totally up for it.
One thing, I had you on Ghost Education 101 last week, and one thing that when I thought of when you said that you like educating, so I'm going to ask you a question real quick before I turn it over to you, is as far as educating people, one thing that you brought up last week that I thought was really, really interesting, and it's great to have your perspective because of your religious background, is the Dibbit box.
Oh, yes.
What are your thoughts and what is the truth behind a Dibbit box?
Okay, well, I can only speak from my personal experience growing up in a Jewish home. I've been asked that question quite a few times, actually. And I can say that the first time I heard about the Dibbit box was on Ghost Adventures. Never, I mean, I talk to people, they're like, yeah, like you kind of hear the word floating around, but it's not the thing that people make it up to be. I was like, but they're talking about a box that makes you cry blood. And like, it just didn't, like, nothing made sense. It's crap.
Right. And that's information I wish I had known before, because I had written the book that I wrote about Vegas.
Right.
The biggest chapter is about Zach's museum. And of course, the biggest section of that chapter is the Dibbit box. But I go into the history of and the story that the guy shared.
Right.
But I had no idea that at the time that it wasn't real and was just going off of the stories that were shared with me.
Yeah, and it's not your fault. It's just that,
Right.
things become embellished over time, and people of
Mhm.
course are going to go after that
Yep.
embellished story, but he did come out later and say, "I made it up. It's not real."
Right.
He
No.
did do that, but it wasn't until more recently. So when you wrote it, that probably wasn't information that was readily available. So it's not your fault. And
Right.
I tell people that I
Yeah.
was like, I always say, don't feel bad what you've been given. It's not your fault,
Mhm.
but it is our responsibility. And Heather, I know you believe in this too. It's our responsibility to keep educating ourselves, and if something new comes
Exactly.
along, to really explore it and check it out. And if something
Right.
needs to be corrected and you feel like you can, please go ahead and correct
Mhm.
it. But some people don't like doing
Yeah.
that, and so you get the stories that just get kind of blown out of proportion.
Right. And that's the
Mhm.
benefit of the book title, because the author or the publisher decided to name it Ghosts and Legends of the Vegas
Mm,
Valley. So it falls right there in the legends, because that's a
yes,
big legend in Vegas. Everything that
yes,
has to do with Zach's museum is
yes.
it is all 100% legend. But anyway, real quick before we hand it over to you, Sandra's joining us, saying hello to everybody. Hello,
Hey,
Sandra. Thank
Sandra.
you for joining. And Jane is joining as well.
Hey, Jane's
Hi.
an
So if
old
you guys
friend of
are
mine.
watching, yep, if you guys are watching, let us know you're here and help us out. And then Philip is here as well, just like direction of a paranormal investigation can
Mhm.
change as new information is found. Exactly.
100%. Yep.
So I guess, are you ready to hand it over, Joe, or do you have anything you want to say?
No, I just want to welcome everybody to the show, and I'm interested with this Dybbuk box thing though, because I've heard about it, but I actually don't even know what it's supposed to be.
It's
You know,
supposed to be a box. So Dybbuk and I'm not an expert again. So, but just from my understanding and growing up with a Jewish background, a Dybbuk is a Jewish entity spirit, not a nice one. And
yeah,
I don't
I've
know
heard that.
how it exactly works, but somehow back in the day, somebody supposedly created this box and cursed it. So there were Dybbuks in it. And if you open the box, they attack you, you cry blood, bad things happen to you. I've always held the belief that you can give power to anything if you believe in it strong enough. So if you are believing strong enough that this particular item in the museum has something attached to it and it's bad, then possibly you're going to manifest bad things around you,
Mhm.
So, but yeah, like as Heather said, it's definitely a legend and it stops
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So
But
that's my
but
Well,
opinion.
there's a lot of people out there that believe it still, though.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, I mean, and that could also go along with a little bit of witchcraft background, is
Mm,
because some witches believe that they can harness the power of spirits and trap them
yes,
for later use. And that could be part of that as well.
I've heard that too.
But
Yeah.
and then at the museum, I mean, I've never been there, so I don't know for sure, but I've heard stories about what happens in some of the rooms,
Hmm.
and some of the stuff that happens could also be trick of lighting to make you feel lightheaded in a room.
Yep.
Who knows what? Because I know they have a little midget clown that jumps out at you in the clown room. So,
Of course they do.
right. And that's why, because of that, that's why I never went to the museum.
Oh,
You don't like clowns?
I don't have a
I don't
problem
like
with clowns.
I don't like the scare factor. If you're gonna
Wow.
jump out at me,
Yeah.
that just ruined the whole thing for me.
Mm,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get that.
exactly. Yeah. But anyway, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you guys for having me on.
Mhm.
I'm really excited to do this with you guys. I went crazy. I have so many questions and I have highlighted questions that I really want to have answered. So, but I am going to start with one. I'm sure you've been asked this tons of times, but I think it's appropriate to start with what got you to started in the paranormal?
Joe, do you
Ladies
want to
first.
start, or you want me to
Oh,
start?
you go.
Okay,
You go
I'll
ahead.
start first.
Ladies first.
Because when Joe starts talking, he won't shut up. So I got to
Hey.
talk first.
Hey, well, just block me out.
I can do that. I can mute you. No, I'm just kidding. Um, for me, it was around 16 or 17. I started having visions and would see my grandfather's apparition in our house. And back in the 80s, it was kind of a belief back then for paranormal was someone had to die in a home or have a connection to that home in order for them to haunt it. And it was a home my grandfather had never been to. My parents purchased it far after his passing. And I just couldn't figure it out. So I started going to the library back in the day where you had to check out books. There was no internet, no computers. And I learned everything I could about paranormal activity at the time. And just a little backstory on that. My grandfather and I were really close, was always hanging out with him, was always with him. And when I was 5, we were out, I was playing in the snow. He was shoveling the patio and he fell face first in the snow and had a heart attack right in front of me. Of course, they swept me away. So I don't remember too much more after that, but he had died right there. And I just couldn't figure out why he was appearing in this house. And from there, my family's vacations weren't let's go to Disney World for the summer or anything like that. It was, let's go to Civil War places. So we would go to, Savannah, Charleston, and we went to Gettysburg every year. And I met Mark Nesbitt, who is the author of Ghost of Gettysburg and does the ghost tours out there. And every time I was out there, I'd ask him, I was this teenager asking him 101 questions, went on all of his tours. And while we were there, I had several experiences, including I actually saw a red orb floating over Triangular Field.
Wow.
And witnessed face to face at Devil's Den. A Confederate soldier walked by me, tipped his hat. And in my head, it was like I could hear him say, kind of like ma'am, and very polite. And he walked away. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm a film student, a photography student at, in college. I'm like, I need to get a photo of this guy. So I chased around the boulder and he was gone.
Wow.
Nowhere to be found, and you would have seen him walking away. So it was like, and from there, it just kind of kept fueling. And but then a little quick side story before Joe takes over. Is I discovered recently. I discovered recently that apparition I saw. I found an article in the Library of Congress that Matthew Brady his apprentice had moved a body from Triangular Field to Devil's Den to create that sniper's photo where you have the Confederate sniper with the rifle. That body actually didn't die there. He moved that body. Wow. To take the photo, to be the first in the press to have an amazing photo. And when they revealed the identity of that person and showed his photo, his enlistment photo, it was the guy I saw more than 30 years ago.
How awesome.
Yeah. So,
That's
but
incredible.
my grandfather got me started in it, and then Mark Nesbitt had a big hand in helping me get through and learning what I know now.
Well, when you saw him, Heather, was he solid? I mean, like a person, or was
I thought he was a person because it was 4th of July weekend and they were having a reenactment that weekend. So I assumed it was a Confederate soldier, someone who was doing reenactments.
I've heard a lot of stories like that. People see, like regiments doing drilling out in the field and battles and stuff. And they tell the tour guide, hey, that was a great reenactment. And they're like, what are you talking about? We don't have any people out there. We actually had that at the museum I volunteered at. A little kid came out to me and said, he goes, can you please thank the guy dressed up as a miner for giving me a tour of the museum? And we were outside and there was only one way in outside of the emergency exit, which was locked. And the other volunteer and I looked at each other. They're like, there's nobody in the museum right now. So we went in thinking there was this creepy old man inside the museum talking to little kids, and there was nobody in this museum.
Wow.
And the kid described us as, a man in overalls like a miner would be wearing. And
wow. Incredible. Joe, how about you?
Joe's introduction to the paranormal is far more interesting than mine.
Well,
that was awesome. I love it. I love that.
Mine started when I was about 3.5. I was named after my maternal grandfather, and he and I were very close. I remember him a little bit, but I was 3.5 when he passed. But he used to pick me up and bring me places and bring me to the park, bring me to church. He was very devout Catholic, and he worked for the railroad, and he used to go to church almost every day before work. My mother would tell me, like, every morning he'd go to like 5:30 mass. That's when they had those. I don't know if they still do, but so one night, it was a Monday night, because my mom passed away about 2.5 years ago, but I asked her back in 2013, I think. I said, Ma, could you please in an email just write down what happened from your point of view, from you and my dad. My dad's been dead 30 years, but I said, because someday you're not going to be here and I want to have it. And I do, I have it saved. And what happened was I was asleep, and I remember having this dream. I remember this like it was 5 minutes ago. I remember this dream where I could hear this voice calling my name, and I could see a light. And I guess I got up out of bed and I walked out into the living room. My parents were watching the football game, and my eyes were closed. So, I was basically sleepwalking. And I said, "What, Mommy? Somebody called Joe. Somebody called me." My parents looked at each other and said, "He's just having a dream." And they put me back into bed. A couple of minutes later, I come out again. Same thing. What? Someone's calling me. Somebody called him Joseph. And my mom puts me back into bed the second time. The phone rings. It's my grandmother. She's like, "I can't wake up your father."
Oh, wow.
Now, my grandfather, what he used to do, and he's a saint today. I don't doubt that at all. He had an easy chair in their bedroom, and he would go up to bed and he would read passages from the Bible before he would turn in. And I guess what happened was they found him in the chair with the Bible on his lap. And what they think happened is he fell asleep and had a heart attack in his sleep, and he passed away. And I call this my divine experience because I feel that I heard God calling him, because we had such a close bond, that I would swear on a stack of Bibles that, that was the Lord calling him, which was sad because he was only, I think, 68 or 69 years old, so, and I carry that Bible with me today on every case. That comes with me on every case I work on, regardless of, whether there's a paranormal affliction going on or not, but it's always with me in my kit. So again, that was 1971. I was 3.5 years old. Fast forward 15 years, when I was 18 years old is when I met Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I've told this story a lot of times, but I'm sure you haven't heard it. And Laurel and I, my wife, we were just dating at the time, newly dating. And she's looking in the paper. She's like, "You want to go see the Warrens lecture tonight instead of going to a movie?" Because that was kind of the thing we did. I didn't bowl, so it went to a movie. So they were lecturing one town over, and we walked in, and Lorraine was at the table, taking the money, tickets or whatever. And she looks at me and she cocks her head to the side. She's like, "Honey, have we met before?" She called everybody honey. She was such a sweetheart. Well, she's looking at me like, you look at somebody like, "I know this person. Where do I know? What's their name? Where do I know them from?" And I said, "No, Lorraine," I said, "I've heard a lot about you. I've heard you on the radio, TV, print media." We didn't have the internet back then. This is 1986, so she's like, "Honey, there's a reason why you're here tonight." She goes, "Please come and see Ed and I after the show. I want to talk to you." So we did. So we had the show, and then afterwards we're cleaning up. Ed's like, "Come on, Lorraine, let's go. I'm hungry." Tony and Ed would be gathering up all the equipment and everything, and the slide projector and all that. But Lorraine would stay to answer the very last question. She was such a sweetheart. She stayed with the crowd and answered all the questions. So we go across the street. There happened to be a diner. One of Ed's thing that passed down to me was anytime we finished a lecture or a case, we convene at a diner and talk about the details of the case or how the lecture went or whatever. And, from the size of me, I've been on a few cases in a few lectures. So she's sitting across from me and she's holding my hand and she's reading my aura. Now, I didn't know that at first, but she told me what she was doing. She was reading my aura, a supernatural glow that emanates from all of us.
Right.
And she said, "Honey, I can tell by your aura that you were meant to do this work." She said, "Would you like to come and work with Ed and I?"
Wow.
And at the time there was 5 or 6 of us students, and they rented a little back room in a place called Hawley Manor in Newtown, Connecticut. It's still there, but it's called the Inn at Newtown, I think now. And this room wasn't much bigger than a coat closet. And there was 6 or 8 chairs in a semicircle, and Ed would bring in, his box of stuff. He would have his tape recorders, maybe some videos, a lot of notes, case files from some of the cases, such as Annabelle and Amityville, and the case, the farmhouse case that the Conjuring 1 movie is based on, and the Enfield poltergeist, and so on and so forth and such like. And that's when I first heard about these cases. So here I am, an 18-year-old kid. I'm still a teenager, and listening to these stories, and people are like, "Oh, weren't you scared?" I go, "Yeah." I mean, I had never heard such stories before, and that's how I got started. They kind of took me under their wing, and they became like grandparents to me. I was very close to them, and I realized not too long ago, I said to my wife, I said, we're the same age now that Ed and Lorraine were when we met them.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of weird. It's kind of come full circle. So what Heather and I do, what I do is, we're in this field to help people. We all are to some degree, but I'm approaching 40 years doing this. Heather, what are you at, 30, 35 years, something like that?
Yeah, since I was 17 and I'm 50 now.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to ask you.
I don't mind sharing. I've learned to embrace my age.
Well, I'm 56 years old now, and I still act like I'm 8, but that's not going to change.
Yes, you do.
So thank you. That's a compliment. So, what I like to, we like to help people, whether they have a paranormal issue or not. They believe they do.
Right.
It may be psychosomatic, but one thing when we talk about paranormal investigator, I'm more of a paranormal researcher. Investigator, yeah, that's a title that's thrown around very loosely, but you got to do your research. So when someone calls you for help, okay, tell me what's happening. You ask them the who, what, when, where, and all that stuff. But then you got to dig into it and say, okay, I know what's happening. You're describing to me what's going on. Let's find out why it's happening. And that's what a lot of people fail to do. A lot of people just want to rush out there with the mystery machine and all their equipment and cat balls and all that, and try to get something on film or photos or audio, and then plaster it all over social media. That's not what we do, or it's certainly not what I do. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's not what I do. So helping people and educating, you mentioned earlier, is something I do. I do a lot of lecturing around the country. I do a lot of public libraries, colleges, universities, maybe lighthouses with Heather if we ever get that going. Historical places. I've done fundraisers for people, things like that. I do a big one in the town where I live that's put on by the town adult education department. And actually, if Jane's still with us, Jane was one of my past clients from I think 2011, and she's stuck with me all these years. And Jane shows up sometimes at my lectures, and I give her the microphone. I said, "Would you like to tell the audience your story and what happened to you and why you called us in?" So what we do is very, very real. I don't do a lot of public stuff. I've done it, but I don't do a lot of it. I don't travel around doing like these, haunted inns or restaurants or whatever. Because I've done some in the past, and like, well, we don't want you to get rid of anything. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If there's a spirit here that needs help passing over, I'm bound by duty to help that spirit. And I've gotten into some heated arguments with owners of places. They're like, no, this is my bread and butter. You can't get rid of the ghost. I'm like, that's not up to you to decide. So that's why I don't do a lot of that. Because if I do find something, I don't consider myself a ghost hunter. I'm more of a ghost helper.
Exactly. Yeah.
Kind of thing. So anyway, I know I get long-winded, Heather.
No,
but I have studied.
I'm used to it. That's why I do the introduction and leave it to you.
As I look back now over, almost 39 years, it's like, wow, and I think I'm like, Ed and Lorraine were 58, 59, when I met them. And, wow, it's like, it's almost come full circle. And there's not many of us left. There's myself, there's Chris, their grandson, there's John, my good friend John Zaffis, their nephew. There's not too many people left that are old school anymore. And the newer folks aren't really interested in that, or they're not trained. Now, I was fortunate that I was trained by Ed and Lorraine. I went on a lot of cases with them. I went to all their lectures, and that's how I learned. I learned and I learned and I learned. I'd listen to the lectures over and over again, and then I would have questions. And then I'd ask questions. They'd call me up sometimes on a Saturday or Sunday. Hey, kid, what are you doing? Oh, nothing, Ed. What do you need? He's like, come on down and meet me in my office. His office was right off the museum, the famous occult museum. And I'd go down there, and he's like, I want to show you a few things. And that's when he would bring out the dinosaur he showed me from the Devil Made Me Do It case in Brookfield, Connecticut. And he's like, this dinosaur was seen walking across the floor, and voice was coming out of it. And I'm sitting there going, really? Holy crap. So I had like a lot of times one-on-one with him.
Yeah.
And I really loved them, and I know that they loved my wife was very close to Lorraine, and but anyway, we only have 2 hours, so
no, I'm
I just have such a long history. Just goes way back.
That's awesome, because I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, and so I grew up watching Ed and Lorraine on the early shows. That's how I got my introduction to them. So to be able to sit down and talk with you and see how they actually worked and how they trained you is really fascinating for me to hear. So thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that kind of you kind of touched on my next question, actually, Joe, is how often do you guys find that a case isn't actually paranormal and it can actually be explained by natural events?
Most of the time.
Yeah.
I would say maybe 2% of the time, maybe even less than that, you'd actually have a paranormal event. But again, like I said, the people that contact us, the foundation or myself, they really believe they have a problem. It's not like they're making it up. They believe heart and soul. I've had so many people contact me and said, hey, I've had ABC Paranormal Group out here, and they told me I have a demon. I have a portal in my house where demons are flying through. And I'm going, oh my God. It's like, because now you got to try and go out there and talk them back off the ledge and say, wait, you don't have a demon here. Okay. Demonic activity is very rare, and possession is rarer still.
Yeah.
Okay. It does happen. I've been involved in demonic cases throughout my career, but I hate them. If I never get another demonic case the rest of my life, I'm not happy. I've had people say to me, oh, I'd love to get a demonic case. I'm like, what are you, nuts? It is not anything like you see on TV.
Yeah.
Okay. And I fear for some of these investigators out there today, if they ever do get a case where there's something really bad, that could cause them harm, certainly psychological harm.
Yeah.
But demonic cases are very rare, as I said. Hauntings, I always tell people, look for a natural explanation. Don't take the nuclear option and say I got a demon. That word is thrown around like nothing these days. Or you need an exorcism. Call a priest. I'm like, you can if you're Catholic, say, and you call a priest in, you can ask Father Joe down at the local rectory, hey, can you come and do a house blessing, or come and have lunch? I'll get pizza and do a house blessing. That's fine. But Father Joe can't do an exorcism.
Right.
You have to be a trained exorcist, and you have to be sanctioned by your local bishop of diocese and all that stuff. But I know I get off topic, but your question is, you always look for a natural explanation, and if you've exhausted all efforts there, then you might look at the supernatural. But I've had cases where people hear thumping and scratching and walking, and you find out they have a squirrel in their attic, or in one case I had there a family of raccoons. And they're so relieved. I had one lady once, I remember, we found out the reason for her haunting. I forget. And she looked at me and she was almost in tears. She's like, I'm so sorry I wasted your time. And I looked at her, I said, do you feel better? She goes, I'm so relieved. I said, then I did my job. I said, as long as you feel better, I'm happy. You didn't waste my time. So. I'll leave it at that. Heather's looking at the clock.
I'm not looking at. Sorry, not Joe. No, no. And for me, it's I don't know. I would say about 10% of the cases we actually found paranormal activity occurring.
Mm-hmm.
But I also didn't do. I did several residentials up until I had one case that made me decide I couldn't do residentials anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I did do a lot of businesses that needed help. I did, and when we were in Vegas, we did a lot of locations, including some hotels and some of the popular tourist attractions where we would take the employees on a tour to help them not be afraid of what's happening in their location.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a lot of those as well. So, but as far as residentials, I mean, out of those 10%, but that one case, I know I've talked about it several times, is the 72-year-old woman called the team that I was on needing help. And it was weird because at first we were thinking that there was really something negative there because the day we were supposed to investigate, it was during COVID. My co-investigators, his car broke down. So he called me to come pick him up. And I'm like, okay, I'll come pick you up. Then our water heater broke in our house and we had water everywhere. So, but then once we got that cleaned up, I still had time to go pick my co-investigator up. And just as I'm getting ready to walk out the door, my son was in School of Rock at the time. And they called to let us know that his class was exposed to COVID. So this is just the beginning stages of COVID. And I'm like, I can't go to this 72-year-old woman's house knowing that I've been exposed to COVID. Because I would be devastated if she got it and, if I was carrying it and not showing symptoms. So I had to cancel and didn't go. But we found another investigator to go with them. And when they were there, they found nothing. There was nothing happening in the home. No EVPs, no video evidence. It was just nothing there. So then when I left that team, I brought the case with me because she wanted to go with me to the new group that I had joined. And my husband and I went and investigated. And when we were talking to her, it was weird because she kept saying that, this entity won't leave her alone. It was, sexually assaulting her, constantly touching her, and she couldn't sit still. But meanwhile, we have her on video telling the story and she's just sitting there. And we have one EVP and it's her voice saying, "Get out." But she wasn't talking. And that, that was on the EVP as well, or on the video camera where we could see she wasn't talking. And it was like, other than that, we have no evidence whatsoever the entire time we were there. Between myself and 4 other people, we cleansed her house 6 times. She was rebaptized. She also had 2 priests come to her home and bless her home. And she was still experiencing activity. And we told her that it could be possibly because she's extremely anemic, that she was suffering from tactile hallucinations and that she needed to see a doctor. We weren't, weren't confirming or denying anything, but she needed to go see a doctor because that's what we were coming up with. And she was on the phone crying with me that she's not crazy.
Right. And you're not trying to tell her she's crazy. It's just that she might want to have this checked out.
Right. But it broke my heart.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I haven't been able to take and this was, 4 years ago now. I haven't been able to take a residential case since then. But other than that, we focus, my team focuses on, helping businesses. If someone calls and says, hey, well, we have activity, because the business owner is not going to cry that they're not crazy. Because, and 9 times out of 10, those cases do have paranormal activity because they're in haunted the antique buildings, the buildings that have been here since the 1700s. Or on Native American land that used to be here in Florida during the Seminole War. So, and we also, focus on educating others. But, I know I'm pulling a Joe. I'm kind of going long around.
No, that's why we balance each other out, because Heather does more public stuff. I don't strictly do residentials, but through my career, that's the bulk of my work has been helping people in their homes. I mean, think about it. You're paying a mortgage or a rent or a lease on your home. That's your castle.
Right.
And I had a case. It's always good when I bring up an example. I had a case in one town over from me some years ago, where there was these 2 sisters that lived together. It was a big house. It used to be a duplex, and they kind of knocked the wall down and made it one big house. and they live together with their families. And it's around Christmas time, but I didn't find out about it until the spring. I was coaching. My son was little in Little League. And I was coaching, and one of the coaches on the other teams knew me, and he knew what I do. And he says, Joe, he says, I got a guy that I work with. And he said his daughters and their whole family moved in with him in his condo. And the condo's busting at the seams with all these people. I said, well, why? He said, well, they're terrified of their house. There's things going on in their house. I said, well, when did it start? He's like, well, they've been there a few months. He said they noticed it around Christmas time. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I gave him my card. A week or so goes by, and I don't hear anything. No phone call, no email. So the following week, I see him again. And I said, hey, your buddy never contacted me. Is everything okay? He's like, oh, I gave him your number. So I don't know. I guess he must have lost my number or something. But anyway, I got a hold of him. And he was telling me, and he introduced me to his daughters. I mean, he's a grown woman. They're probably in their early 30s. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, well, I'll meet you at the house on Saturday. It was a July day. It was a warm day. It was about 11 a.m. in the morning. And I drive up the driveway, and the two sisters are sitting out on the front stoop. And it was really hot out. And I said, ladies, you didn't have to wait for us outside. I was with a good friend of mine. I said, you don't have to wait outside. They go, oh, you don't understand. We're not going back in that house since you got here.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, but ladies, this is your home. You're paying a mortgage on a house you're not living in.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves. I said, okay, let's go in. So we go in and I'm looking around, and all the Christmas stuff was still up. The tree, it was a
and this is July.
Fig tree. This is July.
Okay.
So they hadn't lived there since Christmas time. So what, 7-8 months? Mm-hmm. So, so we helped them there. We didn't find anything. Heather was saying, like, you don't get any evidence. I'm like, if you don't get any evidence, doesn't mean there's nothing there. Doesn't mean they're making it up. It's just, okay, it's quiet. A lot of cases that I go on, things are very quiet. And I remember Ed telling me, he's like, if there's something bad there, not necessarily demonic, but something negative, it could have been a human spirit. But, if you're a jerk in life, you're probably going to be a jerk in death. Mm-hmm. And then hide, because they don't want to be discovered, especially when you get into the dark forces.
Yes.
They don't want to be drawn into the light. They don't want you to know who they are. They just want to hide. And, so long story longer, we saw the case through, and I guess, we brought a priest in to do a blessing. Mm-hmm. And there was activity there. The priest, I remember, was walking through the house. I was right behind him, and he's blessing the rooms with the holy water. And he goes into the little boy's room. An 8-year-old son of one of the ladies had autism. But his room seemed to be like the epicenter of the activity. Oh. I mean, he would have toys going off with no batteries in it, and witnessed by the family.
Oh, that's my biggest fear.
TV would come on and off, and they're sitting there watching TV one day, and there was a stack of like DVDs. I think it might have been VHS back then. And they said just like one by one, they started shooting off the top of the TV. So they got scared, they got terrified, mm-hmm. And who wouldn't be? I mean, you're human, right? It's a natural human emotion to be frightened by something that your brain just can't comprehend. Why is this happening? Mm-hmm. So I'm behind the priest. He walks in the little boy's room and he blesses it, and he doesn't turn around. He backs out. So I'm backing up to let Father come out, and then he walks back in the room and he blesses it again. He turns around and looks at me. He's like, Joe, I gotta go. Just like that, abruptly. He was scared. I could see it. He was terrified. Wow. He sensed something. I didn't see anything happen, but he sensed something, and he left. He left, and he didn't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard that happen a lot with priests, because there's only so much they can do. There's only so much they're trained for, and so when they get to a point where they feel like they can't handle it or they don't know what to do, they just leave. I've heard that happen quite often.
Priests are people first.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've had discussions, not arguments, but discussions with a couple of priests through the years that they said they don't believe in the devil. They don't believe in Satan, and they don't, oh, we only believe in the good. I'm like, well, you believe in Jesus, you believe in God, you believe in, Holy Mary. Well, yeah, of course I do. Well, why don't you believe in, the demonic and the lower, the fallen angel hierarchy? But so I remember another case. I'll tell you real quick because Jane's on here. we were going to have her priest go to her house, and about an hour before we were supposed to meet him there, he called up. He's like, "I'm not coming." Didn't give a reason. "I'm not coming."
Wow.
I think he was afraid.
Yeah.
He was afraid because of the activity that was going on in that house. I'm like, we have a rule. We never send anybody in alone. I think every team probably has that rule.
That's our team too. Yep.
I've broken that rule many times myself. Well, but I'll tell the truth, because I'm up in Connecticut here. I don't have many people up here, but if somebody needs help, what do we say? I'll be there next Thursday. I'll have somebody. No. Now, that's why I said full disclosure. To tell people, don't go on cases alone.
Yeah.
All right. And I don't want to sound hypocritical. I mean, I haven't done any recently. I do a lot of consulting over the phone and Zoom and things like that. But going out and doing an investigation is probably the last thing you should have to do. Okay. If you talk with the client, you have a Zoom call, these days with all the technology, you could see each other like we are now, and say, "Tell me what's going on. What can I do? What is going on?" And then you say, "Okay, well, we've been here 10 years. I said, "When did the activities start, or the alleged activities start?" "Well, it happened to start about 3 years ago." "Okay, well, let's stop right where we are now and move backwards in time." "Okay, what happened 3 years ago? What significant event or traumatic event in your life, could have happened that could have set this in motion?" And then I'll tell them right off the bat, "I'm going to ask you a lot of serious personal questions."
Yep.
Okay. And if you have a problem with the questions, let me know now. But I'm going to get personal. I said, it's not because I just want to know. It's because I got to know. To try and figure out why this is happening. And, most people that are really terrified, Joe, I'll answer anything. I just need help, And I'll ask questions like, is there a history of drugs, alcohol abuse?
We ask the same questions on our
physical
team.
abuse, sexual abuse, any addictions, pornography, anything like that. And I'm not trying to be funny, but you want to find this stuff out so you could try to figure out, throw all the pieces of the puzzle on the table and put them together and say, okay, well, this doesn't fit. Okay, well, that happened. Maybe this fits over here. And then I give them some advice and I said, try this. And many times they'll do it. And a week or two later, I don't know what you did, Joe, but it's gone. I'm like, well, I didn't do it, dear. You did it. I'm not going to show up with a proton pack on my back. That's Hollywood.
Yeah.
I said, it doesn't work that way. I said, I will help guide you through this. I will have your back, give you support, give you information, but you're going to do it. This is your home, or this is your business, or this is your family, and I just hate when people they're afraid to go in their house or a certain room in their house, like the basement or the attic, because that's where everything happens.
It's interesting how so many people feel that, and they don't do it on purpose, but they lose their power. They lose their personal power. Yeah. And I love that you feel so strongly about that, because I also feel the same way. And everybody on my team also feels this way. And I think, Heather, so do you. It's one of the reasons why we do this work, is because we want to show people that you still have power. It's you just have to find that within you and, stand up for yourself and say, hey, this is my house and I live here now. And sometimes I guess you run into the cases where, look, we can live in harmony here, but if you can't follow my rules, then you got to get out, but the most important thing to know, and I tell my daughter this all the time. She just turned 12 years old. I'm like, you need to always hold on to your personal power, because once that goes, then it doesn't even have to be a spirit, but even living people can have power over you. And that's what you don't want. So.
Right. And you need to have respect.
Yes.
For those who have passed, show them respect.
Absolutely.
And like you said, you can peacefully coexist. One thing that we have as human beings is free will. And no one, not even God, will mess with your free will. He gives us our free will so we make our own choices.
Yeah.
So make your choices wisely. That's what I tell people. I said, you decide. I'll give you some advice, whether you want to take it or not. That's fine. But I don't know everything. I never professed to know everything, but after 40 years, I think I know a few things. Keep me out of trouble or get me into trouble.
Yep.
Okay. Are we on the next question?
I don't know.
I don't know where we are.
No, it's like I said, you ask Joe one question, he can take the whole show.
Well, I'm sorry. I go into educational mode and,
okay.
But,
I'm just
but
trying
like
to
what
help.
he said real quick, I mean, he does residential cases and we get called into the business cases. And it's more or less the businesses want to have proof that they're not haunted. Because we had one museum that would do tours for kids that called us in Vegas, the team that I was on, to investigate it and prove that they weren't haunted because there was rumors going around that they were haunted. And when we were done, we're like, we can't say you're not haunted because it was nonstop activity the entire time we were there. And they're like, okay, here, sign this non-disclosure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's like, okay, well, we had a fun free investigation. We got to learn a lot about this location and, okay, we're moving on.
Oh, wow. How funny. Okay, I'm going to move on to some more technical questions with investigating. And I did some homework. I watched a few of your past episodes on your YouTube channel. And Joe, you've said that you like the old school tape recorders. Can you tell us if you feel like digital devices today are less accurate than the actual tape? Do you feel that spirits can imprint their voice or image onto, the old school tape more easily than they can onto a digital device?
Well, it's a very good question. First of all, I don't want to get in trouble with anybody out there that uses these tools. Okay. I'm old school. I have some equipment, of course. I have cameras, I have video cameras, I have night cameras. But the best tool in my bag, other than my Bible and my rosary, it's a $30 Sony tape recorder, and it's probably 30 years old. I've gotten more audio evidence and on this magnetic tape recorder than on digital recorders. I don't know if one is better than the other, to be honest with you. I'm not really a tech guy when it comes to that. I'm a field soldier. That's the way I describe myself. I don't use a lot of this stuff that is out there today. I mean, they have ghost hunting stores and websites you can buy what they call ghost hunting gear. I don't believe in that. I just don't. That's just me, my humble opinion. If you have an intelligent haunting, you have something with intelligence, it's going to be able to communicate. You don't need these toys. Okay. It'll be able to communicate. And God forbid you have a demonic entity, you'll know it. Okay. You'll just know it. You'll feel it. I don't claim to be very psychic or psychically gifted. We all have psychic abilities. But if I walk into a house and there is a negative, evil presence there, I'll feel it. I mean, the hair on the back of my neck will stand up. I'm like, okay, we got to be careful, But I have seen some evidence on television and YouTube that's pretty interesting and fascinating. I need to learn more about it. But the flashlight stuff and the cat ball stuff, I just personally don't get into any of that stuff. EMF meters, I have an old Gauss meter that's probably, I think it's Texas Instruments. It's got to be 30 plus years old. And I've used it on cases, but I try to figure out why this is going off. Why am I getting high readings here? We did a case last summer in New York. My team and I went to New York, and we were there for five nights. And we got in one part of the house very high readings. I forget what they were, but they were abnormally high. And it was on the corner of the house where the power came in. The secondary lines came in. So I went outside, and I was a safety professional before I retired for many, many years. And I used to teach electrical safety. So I looked outside and I said, I think there's a problem with the neutral here. I said, I think there was a problem. So we wrote up a whole 5 or 6 page report for the family and said, listen, I believe that you've got some problems with electrical here. I said, I would call your power company. They'll come out for free and check it out. They'll check the secondary lines on the outside. I said, then I would spend a couple $100 and have an electrician come in and check everything on the inside, you know? So we got high levels of readings. I've had higher level readings if someone had a problem with their refrigerator or their microwave, you know. Well, long-term exposure to high EMF could cause, you know, paranoia, you know, feel like you're being watched or something. It can happen. It can happen, at least in my experience. So I do believe for those purposes, this equipment is important. But, you know, you're putting these things on the bed and like light up the colors for me. And, you know, and all of a sudden they light up and like, oh, there's a ghost there. No, I don't buy it. It's just, you know, like I said, I'm an old school guy. I don't want anybody to get mad at me, but that's just not the way I work, you know. But they are fun and entertaining, and you know, it's not illegal to sell this stuff, but somebody's making money. Maybe I should have thought of it first. Heather, what do you got?
Oh, that was your question.
Was
So
it?
if you have something to add, please go ahead.
You use equipment, don't you?
I use all non-tech tool. I mean, I do have a spirit box, but we use the spirit box on public investigations because people who come to those investigations want instant satisfaction.
Yeah.
Even though it 90% of the time has nothing to do with anything. And I'm turning every time Joe says cat balls into a drinking game. So moving forward on future episodes, when Joe says cat balls, take a shot.
I'm skeptical of those too. Just like there could be the slightest vibration.
I could be wrong. Now I got everybody that's watching is all mad at me now because Joe doesn't like cat balls. I don't like him anymore.
Joe Frankie. No.
My team just found out that, you know, I'm not a huge believer in the cat ball. So, you know, I'm right there with you.
and Philip's always like, they're spirit balls.
Yeah, spirit balls.
Not cat balls. But anyway, I've been doing some research and I've been talking.
Bill gave me one. Okay, I'm going to put it right there.
But I've been talking to different scientists because I take a more scientific approach to the paranormal field, even though I prefer non-tech tools. And I've always thought that when it comes to detecting EMFs or even using a K2 meter with paranormal study, it's people are like, you're okay if the power's off. You're okay if you're not near power lines. But when I'm talking to different scientists, I'm finding that radio waves, television waves, electrical waves can travel 20, 30, 40 miles. So you could be 40 miles from the nearest power station and they fluctuate on waves. So 1 second it's lighting up, the next second it's not. And it could just be the correlation to when you're asking questions that it's lighting up. So I don't have no trust in those whatsoever as far as paranormal activity, because also who determined what scientific proof is there that proves that when it lights up, it's a spirit, you know, doing it. Yeah. And that's one thing that my team is trying to do. And we're still trying to figure out how to do the experiment in the aspect of when paranormal activity, when you're having these personal experiences, to capture what's happening in the atmosphere, what type of chemicals are in the air, you know, everything from chemicals to
relative humidity, temperature, you know,
there's more to it. There's more to it than that. And you can't just ask a question and say, okay, well, the humidity went up. Well, no, the air conditioner turned off is what happened. You know, so your humidity is going to naturally go up. You need to have that personal experience with that scientific data to make these electronic devices be more scientific relevant to the field. So, I mean, as far as my team, we have video cameras, digital voice recorders to capture it, but we use pendulums, dowsing rods, personal experiences, all these. I mean, I do presentations with, you know, other organizations as well as I speak about them. You know, I use fidget spinners and anything non-tech, I feel has more validity. Because if you're in a room that's, you know, has no breezes or anything like that, and all of a sudden these heavy cowbells start going off, you know, something's there causing it. Where, you know, something that just lights up, it's, you know, now I'm going to get the hate mail because
we know Philip's sitting there.
I know.
I'd like to add though, Heather, you made a good point because I teach this. I said, I've never seen a group do this. Now, if there are groups out there that do it, forgive me. I just haven't seen it. What I tell people is if you want to at least get a somewhat accurate reading, or I should say more accurate experiment, is ask the homeowner or business owner to turn the main power switch off.
Yeah.
So you got no juice flowing through the place, you know, because you don't know what's behind the walls. If you're in a building that's 300-400 years old, you know, you got unshielded wiring in the wall. All right. Or mice chewed through them or something. All right. So turn the power off. Now, that's one thing. Now turn all your devices off. You got to turn your phones off, your radios, your walkie-talkies. Turn all that stuff off. All right. Now, if you're still getting a reading, okay, maybe it's coming from another source. But then I think about it. I say, well, where do we live? We live on the Earth, right? What is the Earth? It's just a big magnet.
Yep.
In fact, it's the Earth's magnetic field that protects us from the radiation of the sun. I mean, we just live on one big magnet. So, you know, although these things are going off, and the theory is that, you know, this spiritual energy or whatever sets this off. Okay, it's a good theory, but it hasn't been proven, at least not to my satisfaction.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I say. It's like they're fun to play with, you know, but, you know, when they start going off, people are like, oh, freaking out, like, oh, it's never done that before. Or does it go? And they start running out the door. I'm like, what just happened? You know, I'm like, where are you running to? Where are you going? And that's happened. We've had cases come our way there. They, you know, this group came in and they were here for 3 or 4 hours, and all of a sudden, you know, a can of caviar exploded for no reason, and they took their equipment and ran.
Why are you even there?
well, now, I mean, first of all, it's unprofessional at best, but now you left this family hanging. Now they're even more frightened because, well, wait a minute, we called you in to help us, and you're terrified, and you run out, and they literally packed up and left, and then they ghosted them, no pun intended.
I've heard
but they
that
wouldn't
happen
return their
so
phone
much.
calls.
Yeah.
Oh, it happens more than you would like to hear about.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and Heather and I get along great. We're good friends, but we don't agree on certain things like divine.
We don't agree on a lot.
Well, spirit boards, because from my faith, well, it's based on faith.
Right.
From my faith, I've been always taught that divination is bad. Divination is against the first commandment. When you put something, an object or something above God, you know, or before God, that's against the first commandment. So when you're using Ouija boards that are most popular, that's why I bring them up, or spirit boards or talking boards, however you want to reference it, they're not good. Okay. Ed used to say, he goes, I've never had a Ouija board case where anything good came out of it. Neither have I. You know, they're just, if you're asking questions of to find out knowledge of the future, we're not meant to know the future. Only God knows our future. We're not meant to know the future. So, you know, I joke around with my psychic friends sometimes, like, give me 6 lotto numbers. I'm broke. You know, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work for personal gain that way. And if someone on the other side wants to communicate through that medium, through that conduit, they will.
Yeah.
You know, they will, but they're not going to give you 6 lotto numbers. They're not going to tell you who's going to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't work that way, you know, but people need to understand that with all my experience, I hope people will listen to me. I don't agree with using any form of divination. You know, and Heather and I have a program called what is it?
Ouija or not Ouija?
And, you know, it's very good.
People love it.
And Heather makes her points, and some of them are very, very well done, and made me think about a couple of them. But
well, that's why I like you guys so much, because I have watched some of your episodes, and you don't agree on everything, but unlike a lot of what we see in these Facebook groups, for example, you're not butting heads, and you're not trying to throw the other under the bus just because you believe in something different. And I think we need more of that, especially in this field right now.
That is your right. I mean, that's what makes us individuals.
Absolutely.
We're not all cut from the same cloth. And the way I see it is, we are all brothers and sisters in this world, regardless of what color you are, what religious background, what political views you have. I never talk politics or religion, really. You know, when I talk to my audiences, I said, I was born and raised Roman Catholic, and the Warrens, my mentors, were very, very Catholic. So I have a very strong Catholic approach and stance on this field. But I am welcome and open to other beliefs. You know, I've had people say, oh, I don't agree with that. I'm like, well, great, but we could still be friends. I mean, but you're right. All the hating that's going on out there, and the jockeying for position, and the egos and the hatred and the animosity, and I have nothing to do with it. I want nothing to do with it. That's not why I do this work. I do this work to help people and to help educate people. And I don't get involved in the controversy.
Yeah.
You know, even when I'm asked, I'm like, I have an opinion on it, but I'm keeping it to myself.
And I think that's important because you're not driving it then, you know, you're not helping to just
No. I respect everybody.
I have that ready anytime these goes off.
Oh boy, it just went off. Holy crap.
Did you hit your desk?
I got a ghost in here.
But I do keep telling
Annabelle
people, stay
moved.
tuned, because one of these days when Joe and I are together, I'm going to get him to try a Ouija board.
That's one thing I won't touch is I won't do a Ouija board. It's just my own personal belief. But I've done table tipping with my team, you know, because I feel like it's just a different thing. And somebody once tried to argue with me and tell me that, well, if I use my cell phone to try and capture EVPs, then that also becomes kind of, you know, a portal. She used the word portal. And I'm like, well, no, not necessarily, because there's so much stigma around a Ouija board. There's so much. First of all, I don't understand them enough to sit down and say, yeah, even with somebody, you know, like I wouldn't sit down, as much as I love you, Heather, I wouldn't sit down and do a Ouija board with you, you know, because just for my own personal comfort, that's just not something I would do. But I respect you so much, you know, in the amount of education you've given yourself, and I know your family, how to respect it and how to properly go about it as best you can. But yeah, I just think we all need to respect each other, because you're human, you're an individual, and you're not going to always see eye to eye with people. That is what makes us human.
Right. And it's funny too, because I've always viewed Ouija boards talking, and I don't really, I haven't until recently touched Ouija boards, but I've touched pendulum boards. So to me, no different. You're just using a pendulum instead of a planchette. And I've always viewed that no different than an EVP session. It's just your device is different. You're not touching something. You're talking, even just talking to a spirit
or a seance for that matter.
Yeah, you don't need anything to do it. And it wasn't until I met Karen from the Talking Board Historical Society where she opened my eyes to, you know, the different Ouija boards, and they're interesting, love them, but I view them more from the historical aspect and all of that stuff. And it's just really interesting. And I'm on a mission to find the most interesting and unique, because I have one Ouija board that I was supposed to give away at Phantasm when we were there last year, but it didn't arrive in time, and it actually has Annabelle engraved on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. I was like, oh, I'll give this away when I'm at a convention, but it didn't arrive in time. Wow. And they're unique, but I still prefer the pendulum boards over anything else.
Well, with all that being said, though, because I have people come up to me and say, I used to use a Ouija board as a kid. Am I going to be okay? Yeah, you're probably going to be fine. You know, it's just, it's you know, just because you've used one or you've been part of a group of people, teenagers that's used one, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a problem. But why spin the wheel and take a chance, right? Now, you could use a Ouija board or be into black magic or whatever when maybe you're a teenager. It's fun, witchcraft, black witchcraft, whatever. And then 20 years later, you have all kinds of problems. You're never going to look back and say, oh, this is from when I used a Ouija board 20 years ago. It could be, but you're never going to make that correlation. You know, I just, you know, the most iconic case of a Ouija board was The Exorcist, or the true case that The Exorcist was based on. I don't know. I know, Heather, you know about it, but Temperance, do you know the real story?
I've heard of it. I heard that there was a Ouija board involved, but yeah, I don't know much.
I mean, I could give you the quick. I'll make it quick, Heather.
The 30-minute quick synopsis.
The Exorcist was based on a real case. It was a 14-year-old boy at a Cottage City. It started in Cottage City, Maryland.
Yeah.
And they there's been a lot of documentaries done. They gave him his name was, you know, his real name was Ronald Edwin Hunkler. Okay. And he was a NASA engineer for 40 years. He just died in 2020 at the age of, I think he was 85. Okay, so what happened there was he had his favorite aunt was a spiritualist, and she got him into using a Ouija board. So he used to use the Ouija board together. Okay, and so she passes away, and he's heartbroken. So what
Yeah.
does he do?
He goes
He
to the Ouija
continues to
board.
use the Ouija board to try to connect with her in the afterlife. And then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and he was demonically possessed. And it took 67 exorcisms to liberate him.
Wow.
Okay. 67. It doesn't, Father Joe down the street doesn't come in and, throw some holy water on you and you're fine. It doesn't work that way. That's movies. Some people can never be freed. Look at Father Amorth. He was performed 9 exorcisms on this woman in Italy, and he was planning the 10th before he passed away in 2016. It takes years, and sometimes they can never be liberated. It just depends on a lot of things. But I say this only to educate people, to say, why would you roll the dice and take a chance? And I could cite other cases. Heather's had Ouija board cases. Nothing good can come from that. Because what are you using it for? Yes, people are like, well, Joe, it's just a board game by Parker Brothers. Yeah, it is. It's a piece of cardboard. I said, but take the Ouija board, throw it away, and just have a seance. I said, what are you doing? What are your intentions? It's all about free will and intent. If your intentions are to conjure, that's when you get in trouble.
Yeah. And you can't always trust the people you're doing it with, too. You don't always know where their state of mind is.
And I'll add one more thing. A lot of people like to collect Ouija boards. I had a person in my audience once say, well, I have about 100 of them. I collect them. I said, well, but you're not using them. No, I don't use them. I just collect them. I said, okay. However, someone told me that they found one that was like 100 years old at an antique store. I said, you don't know where that thing's been.
Why can't I get that lucky?
Well, I know, but you don't know who's used it or for what purposes or where it's been. So objects can be haunted.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
People can be haunted. Houses can be haunted. Cars can be haunted. But
don't say that about the car.
I would caution people, if you collect them, to be careful, because if you get one at an antique store, it's like, okay, well, where's this thing been and who's used it for what purposes? And
I personally don't go antiquing. I have a friend who goes antiquing all the time, and she calls me and she's like, yeah, I bought this a few months ago and now this is happening in the house. And I'm like, stop going to antique shops. And one time she called me and she's going off about something. All of this stuff was happening. And I said, it was an antique desk that they had purchased. And I said, the desk needs to be taken out of the house. And the day they took it out of the house, the activity stopped. And she finally found a local paranormal group. Somebody in the group was willing to take the desk for her. So she didn't just, go and give the desk away. She found somebody who knew what they were getting into, and somebody finally came and actually got it off of their property. But when they did, most of the activity stopped. They have some other stuff going on because they live in a really old house. But stop going to antique shops. Just stop it.
I love antique shops, so
there's nothing wrong with antiquing. Just be cautious. I mean, and if you have a Ouija board and it's been involved in rituals, you don't want to burn it. I've had people throw them away, and it would magically return.
That's crazy.
I had a case where I had a confirmation candle given to me by the client that she witnessed broke into a bunch of pieces. She swept it up and threw it away. Okay. A couple days later, it showed back up on the mantle. The same candle. And I was grilling her, saying, are you sure you didn't have 2 of them? And she was like, no. So I still have that candle. It's in my room here somewhere. I still have it because I took it out of the house for her. But, with Ouija boards, people say, well, how do I dispose of them? Dig a hole in the ground. Okay. Consecrate the ground with holy water. Put the board down, and I put Saint Benedict and Saint Michael medals in there that are blessed, of course, and bury it, because sometimes they won't burn. I've had one case where we tried to burn it. The outer edges of the cardboard would char, but the face of the board itself, I doused this thing in lighter fluid. It just wouldn't burn. Just the fluid would burn off. And Ed was still alive then, and I called him. I'm like, Ed, this thing's not burning. He said, no, don't burn it. Bury it. Dig a hole. You got a shovel? And I got some lye too. But he said, this way, because if you burn it, it could release that energy, and then it could go
Oh,
after
I
somebody
see.
else.
Okay,
That's the theory. So
I see.
burn all your boards, Heather. I'll
No,
come
I'm
down.
not burning anything.
We'll have a burning party in the backyard.
I'm liking my little collection that I'm starting.
Be careful.
Okay, next question I really want to get to is what's the biggest misconception people have of you?
Go ahead, Heather.
Of me. Wow.
Mhm. Of you as, in the paranormal field, like, because I know
Right.
for me, like when people found out what I do, first of all, they didn't believe me. They thought I was pulling their chain. I'm like, no, really, this is what I'm
Right.
doing now.
Yeah. No, for me, the biggest one it's a combination of, because I do paranormal activity as well as practice witchcraft, is I'm into the dark arts. And that is far, far from it. I believe, you embrace Mother Nature, you embrace everything that's around you. I truly do believe that if you were to do a dark spell on someone else, that it's going to come back against you. The spell is basically going to bounce off of them and come back at you tenfold.
Yeah.
So you always, but people are like, oh, you're, you demon worshiper, you're a Satanist, and it's like, no. And I always tell people what I believe is no different than what the Native Americans did with the multiple gods, and they put their beliefs in nature and what was surrounding them, or even, even the ancient Egyptians. A lot of the practices that I've picked up come from, Egyptology and what the ancient Egyptians believed in with the multiple gods, the sun god, and all of this stuff. And people just immediately, when they hear, a paranormal investigator or and witch, it's immediately you're a black witch, but yeah, even though I would love, I truly respect the I know Joe's gonna probably crap his pants on this one. I truly respect the Satan Temple up in Massachusetts, in Salem. Would love to get there. It's this gorgeous temple, beautiful. Would love to see it, but not to become a member. But I truly do, it's always fighting people that think that that's what I do.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Is he speechless?
He's debating on, I need to cancel the show.
No, I didn't know you were done. I was waiting. There's a lot of misconceptions. I don't know if it's a misconception of me personally, but you're always afraid that if you tell somebody what you do, that they're going to think you're a wacko. Well, in my case, I kind of am, but you'd find, and you guys probably found this too. People are like, oh, I'm fascinated by that. Tell me more. When I tell them, who I am and what I've done, but there's a lot of misconceptions. There's misconceptions about what we do, misconceptions about, this equipment that people use. We've already talked about that. But also, there's also misconceptions about a lot of these television shows.
Yes.
And there's a lot of teams out there, and I'm not mentioning anybody in particular, but there's a lot of people out there that their only claim to any kind of education on the subject is watching television shows. And that's not good. Just because someone's doing it this way or something on television, well, that must be the way to do it, or I have to buy the equipment that he or she has, or whatever. No. And like I said before, you don't really need all of this equipment because some of it's expensive. It's not really scientifically proven that it works, but people spend a lot of money on this stuff, and that's why people get into arguments and say, well, I've had people send me pictures, for example, of orbs. Let's talk about orbs for a second. All right. People will send me a picture.
Or human too.
Or they'll send me a picture. I'll get a picture first, and then we'll talk about a video. And they'll say, what do you think? And I don't want to offend anybody. All right.
Yeah.
I could usually tell if it's a bug, or if it's water vapor, or if it's if it's dust or something. But I'll say, you know what, it's a fascinating photo, great catch, thanks for sharing, kind of thing. I don't want to offend anybody, but personally, I'd be like, yeah, there's nothing here. And it's more when you get into videos, because people will send ring videos. I've got tons of them sent to me, and you see this thing. I'm like, well, that's a spider web.
Yeah. Yeah. We get tons of those. Yeah.
Reflect, but then some people get mad at you.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I caught something paranormal. I'm like, if you want to believe that, go right ahead. I said, you asked my opinion. So I'm very careful of how I word things because I don't want to offend anybody. People get mad at me. But I said, in my humble opinion, this is what I think it is. And I've never had anybody get mad at me, but I did have a lecture once where I showed a picture on the screen and I said, look at these photographs. They're very interesting, but I wouldn't say that this is a ghost or a spirit. It's fascinating. I tell people when you take photographs, take them in succession of 3 photos. Click, click, click. All right. And see what you got. You have nothing. You might have 2 with nothing and 1 with something. Oh, what's that? So I take the best of the best and I'll show, 10 or 20 pictures. And I say, I'm not saying that this is a ghost or a spirit or a demon. That would be irresponsible of even me, because there's nobody on this earth that could tell you for sure that that's a spirit. Okay. I believe this is what it could be, or given my experience and the activity that's going on, I believe we've captured something here, but just very careful about how I word things. But, when you're out in the middle of a cemetery at 2:00 in the morning, usually in colder weather, because you gotta make sure it's done under certain controlled conditions,
Right.
So you don't have light filtering in, or it's not raining or something like that. And you capture some mist or fog or whatever. I mean, it could be your breath.
Yeah.
I've told people that. Well, hold your breath when you snap your picture, otherwise you breathe out and you click it, and it looks like Casper.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting back to your original question, there's a lot of misconceptions about me personally. I'm not really sure I can answer that. I don't know. No, I mean, Heather, do you have any about me?
No, but since you brought up the TV shows, that reminded me of another misconception that we have as my team, because we've been on a couple documentaries, and then I've also appeared on a couple TV shows as well to give my opinions on things. When either someone finds out we're a paranormal investigating team or we go on an investigation, the first question people ask us is, where's your film crew?
Oh, wow.
And it's like, they don't follow us everywhere we go. It's like, I haven't seen the documentary film crew in 2 years, but they're still putting out documentaries because they filmed with us for an entire 2 weekends.
Wow.
So it's one of those things where it's like, they just don't get it that we don't always have film crews. This isn't like your typical reality TV show, like Sister Wives or, Army Wives or anything like that, where they're there all the time filming for several months. We filmed for a couple weekends, and they have enough footage, and they just keep putting together new documentaries. And it's like, they're not with us all the time.
I will say one big misconception probably is that we're rich or we make money.
Yeah, that's.
I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't think of it, but I always say, listen, we never charge to help people. I don't think anybody does. When we're working. No. But we never charge. The Warrens never charged. They made their money through their books and their lecturing and things like that. But the misconception is, that you make money at it. Look, if someone contacts me, this New York case, for example, the family didn't have the money to pay for our expenses, so it came out of my pocket. The travel, the hotel expenses, the food, all that stuff. And I had my wife look at me and she's like, how much is this going to cost us? It's like, I'm not going to say, well, you can't cover my expenses. I'm not coming. No, I'll never do that. I'll never turn my back on anybody. If it's quite a distance, that's why we have the foundation. I've got people all over the world, really, but the United States is pretty well covered. We've got people and regional directors and assistant directors all over the country. So if it's a case in Oklahoma, we've got people in that area. If it's a case in Texas, we have people in that area, California, so on and so forth. However, if it's a case where there may be some kind of negative or, dare I say, demonic force, and I may need to go, I may need to go, and I got to hop on a plane or drive somewhere, and that comes out of my pocket.
Yep.
So if my wife were on here, maybe she's listening, but she could attest to, I'm in debt today because of 40 years of helping people, and I'm happy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not complaining. I'm happy to do it, but there's no money to be made in this. And the serious investigators, and I know all these folks on commenting, you'll know the serious investigators that are in, we all share that common goal. We want to bring peace to someone's life.
Yeah.
We want to help them in any way we can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we spend our own money because, you know, what you get back from that is immeasurable. You can't put a dollar sign or a price on, you know, when you look in the face of a family or a kid or a child, and they're so relieved that maybe they didn't have any kind of paranormal affliction. It was just, you know, a squirrel in the attic, whatever. If they feel that they've been helped, and, you know, that's what I said earlier, it's not a waste of time. I don't feel it has been,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I haven't been doing this for 40 years for no reason.
If we were all rich, I wouldn't have had to have gone back to work full time after being a stay-at-home mom for 20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
I could continue being a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
So I have two more questions. Well, I have two really important questions that I want to ask you guys before we run out of time. So I'm going to go to these last two questions. And then if we still have time, I'll go to some other ones that I have. But the first one I want to ask is, what's the most important lesson you've learned in this field?
Oh, wow. I would say for me, the most important lesson, and it's one of those that you have to learn the hard way. And I know Joe brought it up a little bit earlier, is that this is actually a dangerous field.
Yes.
All my encounters up until 7 years ago were just seeing apparitions, having encounters with them, interacting with them, and they were all peaceful. But we actually had one case that I was physically attacked. My legs were swept out from underneath me. I was actually blessing the home with, I was doing a pagan ritual to help them bless the home because they were so willing to try anything that they had me do it. And I was, I used cascarilla in my home blessings. And they had this big garden tub in front of a big bay window. I still don't get that. Why do you have a big bay window in your bathroom over your tub? But I was sprinkling cascarilla over there, and just something like, it was like they karate swept my feet out from underneath me. I flew up in the air, landed in the tub on my knees, and I got up and I started screaming at this thing like it was a 2-year-old child. You don't treat people like that. We don't do that. And that was, you know, the first time that I realized we could be physically hurt. You know, here I am investigating for 25 plus years, never been attacked, always had positive interactions with spirits. And then that happened. And that kind of like turned my whole perception all around. And within the same year, I mean, the same case on that one, the spirit followed me home and punched my front door because he couldn't come in my house. This was the one I talked about last week where he punched the front door and it echoed through the house because he couldn't come in. So that I had that. And then a few months later, we were investigating a mine up in Goldfield. And I was actually in a mine and suddenly I couldn't breathe. I just felt like I was being crushed, and it was an area of the mine that had collapsed, and they still do believe that there were bodies back there that they couldn't retrieve because of the collapse. And I never believed that I could be physically attacked and also feel like I was dying myself. You know, and it like completely opened my world that this, you know, this is a scary field. And prior, you know, like I said, prior to that, I was doing it because I enjoyed it and never had anything negative.
Yeah, I'll tag on to that. There's a lot I've learned through the years, and like Heather said, this is not a game. At least not what we do. Anyway, we take this extremely seriously. Do not misrepresent yourself to a business owner or a family to get in their front door. That I see a lot of that. People think it's cool, it's neat. I got all this new equipment. Let's go find a family and try it out in their house. No, and that angers me when people do that because they don't know what they're doing. They haven't had any official training. They watch a bunch of TV shows, go out and buy a bunch of equipment, and now all of a sudden they're Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
it's you know, and look, there's a lot of folks out there that are good-hearted folks that are in this for the right reason. I understand that, but you got a lot of clowns out there too, and they give us a bad name. because they're looking to get more likes or views or subscribers or whatever. I don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
One thing I was taught, my dad always used to say to me, I have to get up in the morning, I have to look in the mirror, and I have to like what I see. My integrity is not for sale.
Yeah.
Okay. And I tell our folks, I said, always be kind, always be gentle, and always be humble. All right. There's no room for egos in this work, and there's too many of them out there. And it makes me sad, really, And my only hope is that the people that truly have experiences that feel they really need help will find one of us.
Yeah.
And not find these other kinds of people, these, what I call them, thrill seekers or urban explorers, and they think it's neat and it's cool. Now, is it illegal? No, but it's immoral.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I feel. I feel very strongly about that, but I'll just leave it at that. No, really, I just because I could go off on a tangent, that, and I don't want to sound like a jerk. I feel people's pain physically. Now, Heather, you were attacked. I've worked on demonic cases, a couple of them in my life. The first one I was on, I was 360 pounds. I got bench pressed 500 pounds. I was a big, strong guy. Now I'm old. But I was picked up and thrown across the room like I was nothing. Casper the Friendly Ghost can't do that. You don't have that kind of power. This was a demonic case, and I was picked up and I was thrown. It was almost like I was pushed and pulled at the same time, up against the wall, and went about 10 or 12 feet, cracked the drywall. And people are like, "Well, weren't you scared?" I'm like, "You bet your ass I was scared." I was maybe 23, 24 years old at the time. I said I was scared, but I got up and I said I was more pissed off than I was scared. And I'm like, I got up and brushed myself off and said, "Is that all you got?" And they said a few other choice words that I can't repeat here, but but in a case that I'm still working on in Enfield, Connecticut, way back in the day, where the children were targeted. These were babies; they're a year and a half old.
Yeah,
and they were targeted. So I hear a lot of stuff out there in the internet that this case was fake and phony. No, this was my case. This was our case back in 2007 through 2010. We worked on this case.
Wow.
And it was a bad case. And Bishop McKenna came in and he actually performed some rituals there that helped free this house. Now, there's still some activity there, I understand, but I haven't investigated the home recently. But, shameless plug, I am doing an event there this weekend. I'm giving a talk at the house on Saturday. I'm going to be discussing my history in the paranormal, but I'm going to focus on the history of the house. So people are going to be actually sitting in the living room of a real haunted house.
Wow.
I'm going to be doing that this weekend. And I may be doing more throughout the summer, depending on the family's needs. But just be careful. Yeah. And if you get in over your head, know it. Be smart enough to realize you're in over your head, and that there are people like us that have a little more experience probably and can help you. People can reach out to me. I don't care.
Yeah.
So I'm on Facebook. My daughter just hooked me up with TikTok. So I guess I'm on TikTok too. But if anybody needs my help or Heather's help, please reach out to us and we'll help you in any way we can.
Yeah. And even if I don't do residential cases on myself, I do offer a lot of consultations. I help people from behind the scenes. It's just because the other thing I wanted to add is another reason why we don't do residential cases is because we're trying to do more scientific experiments to try to find proof that ghosts exist, type of thing, I guess you would say. Right. And you can't walk into a client's home and say, "Hey, we just came up with this new experiment. Can we try it in your home?" you really can't do that. People do that, but my team won't, and that's why we choose the public locations to do so we can test out these theories and stuff like that. And like you said, if it's something that you don't know how to handle or you're not sure what to do, don't leave the client high and dry. Even reach out to us, and we can get you in contact with someone who can help you. I know people all across the country, as well as Joe does. And, I know people around the world that can help you. And I know everyone from paranormal researchers to actual psychologists and doctors and scientists that are willing to help as well.
And there's no shame in admitting it.
Exorcists too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's no shame in admitting that you got in over your head.
No, not at all.
Not
at all. Don't let your ego get in the way. Look, if you need help, please, we're here for you.
Yeah.
And even if you need help because you're experiencing paranormal activity as a paranormal researcher, I know I've helped many teams who they've gone into a case and they've brought something home with them. And I've helped them as well.
Yeah.
You can easily get an attachment.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, be careful. Be, whatever religious denomination you are, protect yourself. Protect yourself, make sure you do what you need to do to protect yourself and your family and the people you're with. Because you're absolutely right. You could bring something home with you and it can get attached to you. And that's happened to many people I've known where they've got an attachment. A good friend of mine still has that. We worked on the Enfield case together. He won't go anywhere near the house. He's had problems for the past 16 years that he attributes to this house. Financial problems, marital problems, occupational issues with jobs and things like that. These kind of things are out to destroy you.
Yeah.
And you could be affected. I have some health issues. 56 years old. I have some health issues. I would not be surprised one iota that some of these issues are due to the work I've been doing for 40 years. I mean, could I prove it? Absolutely not. But I remember Ed used to say, he goes, you know what, kid? He goes, the devil knows who we are and it hates us because it knows that, we were made in the image of God and it hates us. So whatever. I'm not going to stop though, unless I physically can't do it anymore, and even if I'm not physically going to a location, I can do a call, a Zoom meeting or whatever, people want my input. I'm happy to give it. So.
And one last question that I really want to get to, I saved the best for last. I was trying to think of just really interesting questions because, this is kind of like a once in a lifetime thing. So I wanted to, just have really, really awesome
Unless
questions.
we do it again, it'll be twice in a lifetime.
Would love to.
Right.
I would love to do this again. But my question for you guys is, what's the one thing you're hoping to discover once you cross over?
Answers. There are answers that we have that'll never we'll never receive the answers to in our lifetime. I believe that. Another thing Ed used to say to me all the time is like, spirits don't come on your time. They come on their time. So, I mean, I've got many questions that I would like to have answers to, but I don't feel like we're meant to know the answers to those questions. And I'm hoping when it is my time and I cross over, first of all, I hope I'm going up and not down. I could just see Satan looking at me and goes, I don't want him. Get him out of here. But no.
That's the only reason you'll go up.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'll stay earthbound. I'll have to live it all over again. do things right. But yeah, but lot of questions that I'd like to find the answers to on the other side. I actually tell people that I said, we're not going to know the answer to that, but when we cross over, maybe we will.
Yeah. And for me, I know I'm going to get hate mail for this answer, but this is truly how I felt for years, and I don't talk about it often. But I want to know that we will be reconnected with our lost loved ones, because one of the many reasons I left the Roman Catholic Church was because I truly did believe that if there was a God, why would he want us to suffer losing loved ones like we do? My grandfather died in front of me. My grandmother died of cancer. I had a fiance not at the time, but several years later that kind of confirmed why I left. A friend of mine asked me to marry him, and I told him I had to think about it overnight. And when I went to go tell him yes the next day, he had passed away in his sleep. So I never got to tell him yes. So I've always had in my mind, if there really was a God, why would he put us through this? It was, why would he put us through all these little tests? And I just could never answer it. So that's where I found comfort in Mother Nature. And I truly do believe that when it's time for us to cross over, that this wasn't for nothing.
Yeah.
That there was a reason why we went through.
There's a reason for everything. Yeah.
Right. And that we are connected with our loved ones once we pass over.
Yeah.
And that's where your faith comes in, because I believe we will be.
Right.
But faith is believing in things that common sense tells you not to. I take that from Miracle on 34th Street. I love that quote. I use it all the time. But when you break it down and think about it, it's like, that's true. You know, I mean, you have to have the faith that this exists or this will happen. You know,
right. And then on the flip side, and this is the Roman Catholic, raising that I had, it's on the flip side, I think in the back of my head, because I'm not Catholic anymore, will I be reconnected with my grandparents because they were strict Roman Catholics?
Sure.
So, so then I have that fear, is always there. It's like, crap, I'm never going to see them again because I don't believe as they did. So I'm really hoping that that's not the case.
I would say it's not.
Yeah, I was going to say
and
that
I think deep down, it's not, but
yeah,
I know you still can't,
sure,
when you're part of a congregation that is one of the largest Roman Catholic churches in the Chicago area, and they tell you, do this or you're going to hell, do this or you're going to hell. It's, even 40 years after not being a part of that church anymore, it's still like crap.
You're right. I mean, for many years I was angry. Look, my grandfather, who I feel was a saint. He was a very saintly man and very devout Catholic. Why did God have to take him so young? But it's not up to me to question God. My dad's been gone 30 years. I lost my dad when I was in my 20s, but it's like, why? Why? But there's a reason for it. We just won't get the answer to that until we pass over. That's what I believe.
Right.
But there's all kinds of questions. But
why does go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, why does people say, why is it, why are there war in Ukraine and Israel and all this? It's free will. I mean, God's just probably up there going, Jesus, what did I do?
Yeah.
And I know I lost my grandparents young and my mom was in her 20s, but her parents were in their 40s, late 30s, early 40s when they had her. And she was 10 years younger than her brother. So they were already, granted they died, I think 63 and 64 when they passed.
Oh, young.
It's too young.
And and this was back in the 80s.
Yeah. My wife lost my wife's parents were 50 and 51. Her dad passed away and her mom, and we're older than they were. My wife just turned 60 last fall. And she gets sad about it. And I don't blame her. It's like, your parents, were only 50 and 51 years old when they passed away. That's sad. We think about that all the time because our kids, who are now adults, got cheated out of those grandparents. They only knew one, my mom, because, my dad and her parents passed before any of them were born. Yeah. But again, why does this have to happen? We're not going to get we're not meant to know that. Right now,
right?
The way I feel. What else you got?
I do have more. I really wanted to have those answered, so that's
how much time we have.
We still have 20 minutes.
Okay.
Let me go take a nap.
Let's see. Okay, well, here's a good one. Me and Piper, we are both authors. We started writing paranormal just because we love it. We've been I've been a fan of it since I 8 or 9 years old. It's just always been part of my life. So we constantly talk to each other. We go back and forth. We're like, oh, I don't know. Should I put this in the book? Should I not put it in the book? We both write fiction. So our question to you guys, coming from authors, is obviously we're writing fiction. We have to embellish it. Are we being paranoid? When we're writing these stories and we're like, oh my God, are we gonna, like, how much hate mail are we gonna get? Are we gonna get any? Like,
I would say just do what your heart tells you to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what other people think. Just do what your heart tells you to do.
I mean, I'm not kidding you.
There's no right or wrong.
Once a week, we're talking to each other and we're like, oh, I wrote this scene.
I'll give Heather the floor because she's the author. I'm an inspiring author. I'm still writing my book, but that's gonna.
You haven't written your outline yet.
Yeah, there's some of it. I know what I want to write. I just got to do it.
Right. I truly do say, go, like he said, go with your heart, because when I do have several fiction books that I am in the process of working with a publisher on getting them published. They just want me to do a few things to them before they accept them. But whenever I sit down and write, going back to school, the author had this plan for this type of symmetry. The author had this plan for this theme. I don't think about any of that crap. Whatever we learned in school that was supposed to go into writing, the authors didn't think that. I don't do any of that. I just sit down. I know what I want to write, and it just comes to me, and I just go. Okay. And the other thing too is don't worry about what you're writing, because, you know, I write for me. If someone buys the book, bonus.
Yeah.
If no one buys the book, great. And the other thing too is real life paranormal experiences are far scarier than any fiction author could come up with. So I mean, I believe the true nonfiction stories are far scarier than anything that authors can write. But then again, I'm from the camp of every horror story comes from a real life experience.
That is true. That is true. Yeah, I believe
we always say, like, the movies that are out today, you know, I talk about it with some of my colleagues sometimes, even Heather and I have talked. I'm like, if they just told the real story, the true story, it's far more terrifying than the BS. Yeah. So, I mean, my book, and it's going to happen, but mine's going to be about my life and the real cases I've worked on. You know, and it'll be, you know, the more iconic cases like the Enfield poltergeist and the house in East Haven, Connecticut that I worked on. Those are some of the high profile cases for me, you know, but I think people would rather read about something that was real, that really happened, you know, or not. We'll see.
Depending what mood you're in.
Yeah.
How do you deal with people? Because we've gotten, just on the paranormal team that I'm on, we've gotten a couple of these in recent months. How do you deal with people who say, I just want you to come out and prove it's here so I can call a show? They just want the fame. Like, are those cases that you guys take?
I wouldn't do it. I would just say respectfully.
Have the show find a team.
I just say respectfully, that's not what I do. You know, I mean, I'd be very kind, you know. I just say that's not what I do. If you have a problem or you are scared, but yeah, people they want to monetize stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had a couple of cases where people contacted some of these shows. I said, I'm not going to have any part of it. I said, you're going to exploit your family and your home, and people are going to find out about it, and you're going to, and they're sorry they did, because that happened. A friend of mine had a restaurant that had real activity. She would call me down there, and she did one show on Discovery. I think it was a haunting or something years ago, 2005. But she said that's the biggest regret that she had, because she would have people coming in off the street. Hey, can we investigate your bar, your restaurant? And you know, it got out of hand. Wow. She said, and I mean, look at poor Norma Sutcliffe that lived in the Harrisburg home. You know, the Conjuring house.
Yeah.
After the movie came out in 2013, they had people walking up to their windows, knocking on their doors. Can we come in? I mean, who wants that kind of attention?
Yeah.
But what real paranormal investigator does that?
True.
On the flip side,
I wouldn't think about it.
Right.
I wouldn't even think about it. That's why I said you.
Yeah.
You know, people will do it for likes. They'll do it for views. And hey, if you got 10 million people on YouTube, you're probably making money off the advertisements or whatever. But you know what? Integrity.
Yeah.
I always go back to integrity.
Yeah. And proof we're not in it for the views. We only have 7 people watching tonight.
I'm obviously not in it for the money.
Yeah.
We still do what we do.
And we have a blast doing it.
You know, this was I always say this was a vocation, not an occupation.
That's a great way to put it.
This was a calling for me, and I was chosen.
You
know, and I'm happy. I've lived this journey so far, and I hope I have many years left. Unless Heather kicks my butt.
No.
But you know what, Heather? You know what I got here?
You just need to pick up your phone more often.
I got my holy water right here.
Yeah, well, you know, I got my cascarilla and my seawater.
Okay. Let's see who's got more power.
My belief would be they both have power.
I got Hannibal. That's Hannibal. That's the good twin sister.
Okay, I have another technical question for you guys. So we were just recently at Brushy Mountain in Tennessee, and of course,
Mhm.
we have all our cameras set up, and we're thinking it's kind of quiet. And of course, when you go back and review the footage, you find you have tons of EVPs, and it's actually not as quiet as you thought. But when you are in a place and you are finding things to be just too quiet and you're like, man, I know there's activity here just from the interviews we did, or we've been here before and we got all of this stuff. Do you guys do anything to help stir the activity up? Because from with my paranormal investigation team, our motto is ghosts were people too, so we
Mhm.
never provoke. We're not mean to them. We're
Be
very
respectful.
respectful. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But do you
Yeah.
guys do anything, not necessarily being disrespectful, but do you have any tricks up your sleeve to kind of get things stirred up just so you can get something on a tape recorder or on video?
Right. Yeah. I know our team, what we'll do is if it's quiet, we'll change things up. We'll either use different type of investigation tools, techniques. We'll change
Mhm.
up who's in the room. I know we always say don't investigate alone, but sometimes we'll just have one person in the room
Mhm.
because my investigation technique is I'll go into a room, sit down in a corner, and I'll be like, I'll introduce myself. My name's Heather. This is my life, X, Y, and Z. I would really love to learn more about you. And I even open up to the spirits and say, hey, you can even ask me any questions you have.
Mm.
And then I just sit there
Yeah,
in
hi,
silence
Heather.
and just let whatever's happening around me happen. And if that doesn't work, then, we bring someone else in. We
Good
we
night.
switch,
I say good night.
we change things. Like if for, I don't want to say, because we don't use cat balls, but let's say the cat balls weren't working. We would switch it up and use fidget spinners or a pendulum board, or, we would, just try something different. Feathers, balloons with balls with bells inside of them.
Oh,
Just,
okay.
do things to change it up to kind of, because maybe the spirits just don't want to talk to you.
Mhm.
Maybe it's trigger objects. What trigger object used for one spirit might not work for another spirit. So you're
Right.
constantly having to change things up, and they might not want to talk to me, but they might want to talk to my son or my husband.
Mm.
And so that's kind of like why we change, and that's the best way to do. If you're 100% certain there's paranormal activity there and you're not getting anything, it's just because they're bored with you and they don't want to talk to you.
Right.
They're
It's just like
humans.
a person.
I
Yeah.
go to places and I don't want to talk to certain people.
Mhm.
It's so, just change it up and kind of try to come up with something that interests them.
Okay.
So what I would say is, no, I don't provoke or conjure in certain situations. Now there are situations like with the case where I was thrown across the room. We were using religious provocation, which is something that
Yeah.
Ed taught me. But that was for a different reason, though, because there was something very dark and negative there. We were trying to draw it out.
Mm.
But just to prove something's there, no, we'd be very respectful. Matter of fact, I was talking to a colleague of mine on the West Coast a few months back, maybe it was last year, and they had a case, and they planned a time for he and his team to go out there, and he was asking me for some advice on the phone. I said, "Well, what's going on? Is something happening?" He says, "Well, no, the client says things have been quiet." I said, "Then why go?"
Mm.
I said, "Don't stir a hornet's nest."
Yeah.
I said,
Mhm.
I said, you could do what you want, but my advice would be leave it alone unless something happens, something significant, because if you do go there and start doing provoking, and now you're being disrespectful,
Yeah.
now you can incite activity. And guess what? Eventually you're going to go home, but
Yeah.
the family's got to live
They
there.
have to stay there. Yeah.
The family's got to live there. So why would you do that? So absolutely not, unless you're involved in a case where a family's being terrorized,
Mhm.
and you need to bring it out and say, I got to find out what we're dealing with here.
Mhm.
Is this something inhuman, or is it something human? And fortunately, those inhuman cases are very, very rare. But that's where you have to be careful. But no, the short answer is no. I'd never stir anything up, and like Heather said, a trigger object or a trigger person.
Mhm.
Someone with some psychic gifts might be able to sense, or there may be some spirit there trying to get a message through, or they may need help crossing over. It's something I called spirit rescue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what I said. I'm a ghost helper. You know, either I'll help you or I'll have a colleague with more skill and abilities than myself to help you. But definitely wouldn't go in there disrespectfully, like, show yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Like
throw
you see on
something
the
across
show.
the room.
Yeah.
You know, slam the door. Slam the, no, why would you do that?
That always made me mad.
It just
Watching
makes you
those
look
shows
like
and
an
hearing
idiot.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my, you know, like I said, in my humble opinion. But no, I wouldn't do that. You got to be very careful because you don't know what you're up against at
Exactly.
first. You know.
Yep. Okay, looks like we are getting close to wrapping up. So don't get rid of your questions. Keep them because we will definitely have you back on and not only interview you guys
Thank
in the
you.
future. Would love to have you back on because these were great questions.
Thank
Questions
you.
that we don't get asked
Yeah,
often.
put my
And they
glasses back
actually
on.
made me think tonight. So
Thank you for
real quick,
having me. Mhm.
oh, no problem. Real quick, can you let everybody
Oh, it was
know
our
where they can
pleasure.
find you?
Sure. So you can go to paranormalstrangerthings.com. You can get information on both me and my co-host, Piper Kennedy. Our bios are there, as well as links to our books and social media and everything. All the information is on there.
Okay. And Joe, do you want to plug your upcoming event?
Well, yeah. If you're in the Connecticut or Massachusetts area, this Saturday, I think there's a couple of seats left because we only fit so many people in the living room. I'm going to be there speaking about the case. Also, you know, I'll be talking about the Warrens and my history with them and all that. But I'm going to be talking about the case, and you're going to be actually sitting in a real haunted house. This family's been there for a while, and they've dealt with it. It's not all bad. You know, I think the real bad stuff we dealt with back in 2008, 2009. And I firmly believe that was gone because things quieted down for a while. But it's, you know, you got to be careful. If you have a building or a home that you feel is haunted, and you start bringing investigators in and, you know, charging them, look, hey, yay, capitalism, right? But you got to be careful because you don't know what these people are going to be doing in there. You know, and that, I think that's part of the case with the Enfield home is I'm not sure what people that have been invited in, you know, are paying to stay overnight or whatever, what they've been doing in there. They might have been, you know, trying to conjure or provoke, and they go home, and then the family's left to live with whatever they might have brought in. So, so yeah, so it's you can find out about it on my Facebook page, Joe Frankie. You know, it's Saturday the 4th. It's going to go about 6 p.m. I'll start, probably go to midnight or so, or whenever, you know, and I'll sit and I'll talk with people and answer any questions I can, and kind of be a one-on-one experience. I think we're going to have like coffee and donuts. You know,
If I lived
like
closer, I'd be there.
Yeah, it's good. I'm going to be I'll be probably doing more of them. But I'm doing it to help the family, but I'm also doing it to educate people.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be hearing from, you know, a guy that's been doing this for a while, whether, you know, whether you're interested in that or not, but it's not going to be for sensationalism or anything like that. Just me talking about my life in the paranormal and my history with this home. So if you're there,
Cool.
reach out. I think there's some seats left. I haven't talked to the family today, but
okay.
They're taking care of all that. I'm not.
Yeah,
Hope
and
to
I know
see
since our last show, I've gotten word Haunted Florida Roadside Attractions will be out August 5th.
Yay!
And Ghosts and Legends of the Florida Pirates will be out September 5th, as well as, I don't have the publication date, but I have been told it's going to be in August. The children's version of Haunted Florida Lighthouses will be out this August. And that is for
Awesome.
ages 8 to 13. And those will all be coming from the History Press and Arcadia Publishing.
I
Not to
want my
mention
autographed copies.
Yeah, I can
I
add to my
know, and
collection.
I have 4 more books coming out next year that I'm going to be signing the contracts on next year, including the topics of theme parks, Civil War sites in Florida, Seminole War sites in Florida, and haunted Florida cemeteries.
Nice.
So those will all be coming out next year. So stay tuned for all of those. So I'm so excited for that. But again, thank you, Temperance, for joining us tonight. Had a super exciting time. Thank you for all of your questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank to all our viewers. And Jane, I love you too. I see that there.
Yep. Yep. And thank you
Always.
everyone for watching tonight. Make sure you follow us on Passport to the Paranormal because we are working on a ton of things behind the scenes. Or let me rephrase that. I'm working on a ton of things behind the scenes. And then I just
Thank God
text
for
message
you. That's all I got to
ready
say.
go.
No, seriously, Heather does all the heavy lifting. I just show up and
She's
talk.
incredible. She does so much.
She's amazing.
We're
We
looking
wouldn't we
to,
wouldn't have this without her. So thank you, Heather.
Yeah, we're looking to officially be on a radio station, of course, in Georgia, like Ghost Education 101 is going to be on. They've asked us to come on there as well. And then also possibly some events coming up from us. You just never know what's coming from Passport to the Paranormal.
Fingers
So make sure
crossed.
you follow us on Facebook to stay up to date with everything. And then watch live every other Wednesday on Passport to the Paranormal on Facebook, Parapost Network, and Parallax TV #1. And then you can also catch the replay on my personal YouTube because we don't have a Passport to the Paranormal YouTube yet, but my YouTube is at Heather Leigh PhD. And then we return in 2 weeks, and we are welcoming back the owners of the Enfield Demon House to finish our conversation that we weren't able to finish last time they were on. Everybody who commented with questions, I have saved your questions, so make sure you join in. I've actually already added them to the broadcast, so they will automatically post as we are interviewing them. So again,
It's a fascinating case.
Yep.
You know, and like I said, worked at it for about 3.5 years. This wasn't a one or two visit thing. This was pretty tough. I'd get calls in the middle of the night. Joe, something's happening up here, and it's a 45-minute drive for me. So it's not like it was around the corner. But that's why I do it. So got my hold of
but again, thank you everyone, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everyone. God bless you all.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you, Temperance. We'll talk soon. Bye, dear.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.